To listen is to respect. Good morning, my friend. This is Coffee with Kaizen number 5. The day is Wednesday, August 18th, 2021. And today we're talking about 8 simple words that you need to use in your next argument or conflict to resolve the issue, the problem, the situation, whatever it is. Now, if you want to read a transcript of this episode, you can go to lifeinenglish.net/podcast/CK5. Now, I know that link is very long, so another thing that you can do is go to lifeinenglish.net/episodes, and it will be the newest episode on the list. And there you can read the transcript and also explanations of useful words and phrases and things like that to get the complete experience and really learn with this episode and the concepts that we'll be talking about today. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get into this episode, man. So today I'm going to be sharing a short little video from a man named Joseph Tan. He, I guess, is the owner of a consulting company called Good Monday Consulting. I'll leave all of his information in the description if you're watching this on YouTube, or in the show notes below the transcription if you're looking at this on my website. And I really like this video because I think it's something that a lot of us really need to understand. I've talked before about how listening can make you a better speaker in any language, but I also think listening can make you a better person in so many ways. It can help you do so many more things in life that you can never imagine. You know what I mean? And that's basically what Joseph is going to talk about today. So we're not going to waste any time. I'm going to play the clip, explain a couple things to you, and we'll go from there. All right, so let's do it.
Conflict happens when I'm so full of my own perspective, my own point of view. Thus, it is like being in a house with only one window. In order to resolve the conflict, I must let in more light. Hence, my task is to create more windows and welcome in more light into the conversation so that there's more light than heat. Here are 8 words to help you let in more light into your situation of conflict. Here are the 8 words. Help me see where you are coming from. Let me say it again. Help me see where you are coming from. Then you shut up and listen. To listen doesn't mean you agree, but to listen is to respect. If you're humble enough, differences in perspective will not lead to conflict. It will only lead to enlightenment. Think about it.
So before we move any further in the episode, I'm going to take this time to explain a couple words and phrases that he used during that clip, just so that the entire thing is clear to you if you're just listening to this. All right, so the first word is conflict, the main topic or the main idea of this entire episode. So conflict is a serious disagreement or argument, typically one that lasts a long time, okay? Now, next he said full of. You know, conflict happens when I'm so full of my perspective, my thoughts, my point of view, that I don't have any space for the thoughts or perspective of someone else. So when we say full of means containing or holding as much or as many as possible, having no empty space. So think of a glass of water. Eventually, if you keep pouring water into the cup, it's going to be full. There will be no more space for any more water. So he's using it figuratively in this case by saying I'm so full of my own perspective that there's no space for any difference of opinion, any different perspective, or different way of seeing things. Now, the next one is perspective or point of view. And perspective is just a particular attitude toward or a way of regarding or looking at something. So it's the way that you see something. That's your perspective. All right. So in a conflict, many times you're not even interested in seeing things in a different way or seeing things from that person's perspective or point of view. Now, next, this one is advanced and really kind of formal, and I wouldn't even recommend that you use this word, but you will hear it from time to time, so I just want you to understand it. It's the word thus, Thus, thus. And this means as a result or consequence of this, or you could say therefore. That's another way of saying thus, is therefore. So in this case, when he says thus, he's saying conflict happens when I'm so full of my own perspective and point of view. Therefore, or as a result of this, or as a consequence of this, it's like being in a house with only one window. I can only have one perspective, and there's not much light in the house. That's the idea. The next word is resolve. Now, maybe you know what this means, but resolve just means to settle or find a solution to a problem, a dispute, a conflict, or something like that. So you might hear the word resolve a conflict, or end a conflict, or find a solution to a conflict. In my opinion, they all have the same idea. Now, the next word is hence, which is very similar to thus. The word hence, Hence, means as a consequence or for this reason. So when he says, in order to resolve the conflict, I must let in more light. Hence, my task is to create more windows. He's saying my duty or my responsibility is to let more light into the house. Therefore, or because of this, or as a result of this, as a consequence, for this reason, I must create more windows to let more light in. This is another one of those words that, in my opinion, is pretty formal. You don't hear people say this every day, or at least I don't hear people say this every day. I see it as much more formal English, but now you should have an idea of what it means the next time you hear it. But I would say don't worry about including this in your vocabulary, the words thus or hence, because in my experience, we just don't speak like that on a daily basis, okay? But now you should have an idea of what they mean. So next on the list is welcome in. To welcome in. Now, to welcome means to greet someone in a polite, warm, and friendly way, right? When you welcome somebody into your house or your country or the party, you're happy to see them and you welcome them in. You receive them in a warm and friendly way. So when he's saying welcome in more light or welcome in a different perspective, it's the same idea, just figuratively. So be open to a different perspective, a different light to shine on this issue or this problem or this misunderstanding that we're having. Now, the 8 magic words to resolve this conflict. Help me see where you are coming from. Now, what I want to explain here is the words coming from when we use them together. So if you say to someone, you know, or you see where they're coming from, what you mean is that you understand why that person has a particular opinion or perspective, even though in most cases you don't agree with their opinion or their perspective. So we have an argument or a conflict or some type of misunderstanding, and I say, help me see where you're coming from, because we clearly have a difference of opinion. And then you explain to me what you think, you explain to me your perspective and your opinion and things like that. And I don't agree, but I understand. So in that case, I would say, I see where you're coming from. I see your viewpoint, your perspective. I see why you would think that, okay? It makes sense to me why you would think those things, even though I don't agree. So I disagree, but I see where you're coming from. Okay, it's a very useful phrase. All right, next is shut up. I'm sure you've heard this at some point if you've been learning English for any amount of time, but let me just explain it just in case. Shut up is a rude way of telling someone to stop talking or to be quiet. So when he says, after you ask somebody to help them see where you're coming from, you need to shut up, stop talking, be quiet, and just listen to what they have to say. Don't interrupt. Don't try to talk over them. Don't try to do anything of the sort. Be silent and just listen. Just be receiving of their message, welcome it in, and consider it, right? And he says, if you're humble enough, humble, Humble. Humble is having or showing a modest or low estimation of one's own importance. And that doesn't mean that you don't think you're important. It doesn't mean that you have low self-esteem. It doesn't mean that you don't think highly of yourself. In my opinion, it's 2 different things. I just think it's not overestimating your importance. To me, that's what being humble is. It's understanding you are no more important than anyone else. You are no more significant or interesting or powerful or intelligent. And you might be, let's be for real, that it's all relative, right? But being humble is understanding that you're just another person, just like everybody else. So for that reason, you should be giving everybody else the same respect and consideration that you expect to receive, because you're no better than anybody else just for being you, you know? Anyway, when he says humble enough, maybe that doesn't make sense to you. If you're humble enough, disagreements should not lead into conflict, for example. When he says humble enough, he's saying if you have a sufficient level of humility, right? So many times we'll use this word enough in that way, you know, like if you're hungry enough, then you'll actually go get some food. You won't just sit down and complain that you're hungry. Once you are hungry enough, you will go get some food. Once you feel a sufficient level of hunger, you will go get some food. So just understand that word enough after an adjective is describing a sufficient level of, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Now, last word on the list is enlightenment. Enlightenment is the action or state of attaining or having attained spiritual knowledge or insight. And to enlighten which is the verb, means to give someone greater knowledge and understanding about a subject or a situation. So we're really talking about that second definition because we're not really referring to spiritual knowledge here. So when we say enlightenment, conversation, understanding, considering the other person's perspective doesn't or shouldn't lead to conflict. It should only lead to enlightenment. It should only lead to you having a greater knowledge and understanding about the way this person sees the world, the way this person sees that particular situation, the way this person sees you and themselves. Okay, that's the whole point of having a discussion, not to win or to lose, right? Because that's pointless. It's a waste of time, but to gain some type of understanding at the end of the day. That's the point, right? So it took longer than I expected to play the video and to explain the vocabulary, the phrases, and the ideas and things like that. But I'm really interested in the subject, so I might go deeper into this on the Life in English podcast at some point. But I still like to leave you with what I believe was one of the most important points, which is to listen is to respect. In my opinion, it's becoming less and less common to listen to other people, which means it's becoming less and less common to respect other people. But what you got to remember, what you got to understand is that if you only listen to yourself, if you're only talking all the time, you're not learning anything new. You don't learn anything by talking. You learn by listening. So what does that mean? That means that if you're only talking, if you're never listening to other people, considering other people's perspectives, you are getting dumber by the day. That's what's happening. By never listening to other people, by never considering other perspectives, points of views, ways of seeing the world, possibilities and things like that, by never showing the other person respect and just listening to what they have to say, you are literally getting dumber. You're getting dumber because you don't know everything. You're not always right, even though you may think you're hot shit. You're just not, okay? So be humble, show some respect, and just listen. You might learn something.